The primal need of the purified soul, then, is the power of concentration. His whole being must be set towards the object of his craving if he is to attain to it. Look that nothing live in thy working mind, but a naked intent, stretching into God. Any thought of him is inadequate, and for that reason defeats its own end, a doctrine, of course, directly traceable to the mystical theology of Dionysius the Areopagite. Of God himself can no man think, says the writer of the Jude, and therefore I would leave all that thing that I can think, and choose to my love that thing that I cannot think. The universes which are amenable to the intellect can never satisfy the instincts of the heart. Further, there is to be no willful choosing of method, no fussy activity of the surface, intelligence. The Cloud of Unknowing 27. Mystic who seeks the divine cloud of unknowing is to be surrendered to the direction of his deeper mind, his transcendental consciousness, that spark of the soul which is in touch with eternal realities. Meddle thou not therewith, as thou wouldest help it, for dread lest thou spill all. Be thou but the tree, and let it be the right, be thou but the house, and let it be the husbandman dwelling therein. In the Epistle of Privy Council, there is a passage which expresses with singular completeness the author s theory of this contemplative art, this silent yet ardent encounter of the soul with God. Prayer, said Mechthild of Magdeburg, brings together two lovers, God and the soul, in a narrow room where they speak much of love, and here the rules which govern that meeting are laid down by a master's hand. When thou comest by thy self, he says, think not before what thou shalt do after, but forsake as well good thoughts as evil thoughts, and 28 Cloud of Unknowing. Pray not with thy mouth but list thee right well. And then if thou ought, shalt say, look not how much nor how little that it be, nor weigh not what it is, nor what it bemeaneth. And look, that nothing live in thy working mind, but a naked intent stretching into God, not clothed in any special thought of God in himself. This naked tent freely fastened and grounded in very belief shall be naught else to thy thought and to thy feeling but a naked thought and a blind feeling of thine own being, as if thou saidest thus to God, within in thy meaning, that what I am, Lord, I offer unto thee, without any looking to any quality of thy being, but only that thou art as thou art, without any more, that meek darkness be thy mirror, and thy whole remembrance. Think no further of thyself than I bid thee do of thy God, so that thou be one with him in spirit, as thus without departing and scattering, for he is thy being, and in him thou art that thou art. Cloud of Unknowing 29. Not only by cause and by being, but also, he is in thee both thy cause and thy being. And therefore think on God in this work as thou dost on thy self, and on thyself as thou dost on God, that he is as he is and thou art as thou art. and that thy thought be not scattered nor departed, but proved in him that is all. The conception of reality which underlies this profound and beautiful passage has much in common with that found in the work of many other mystics, since it is ultimately derived from the great Neoplatonic philosophy of the contemplative life. But the writer invests it, I think, with a deeper and wider meaning than it is made to bear in the writings even of Ruiz, Broek, Saint Teresa, or Saint John of the Cross. For he is thy being, and in him thou art that thou art, not only by cause and by being, but also he is in thee both thy cause and thy being. It was a deep thinker as well as a great lover who wrote this 130 Cloud of Unknowing, who joined hands with the philosophers, as well as with the saints. That meek darkness be thy mirror. What is this darkness? It is the night of the intellect into which we are plunged when we attain to a state of consciousness which is above thought. Enter on a plane of spiritual experience with which the intellect cannot deal. This is the divine darkness, the cloud of unknowing, or of ignorance, dark with excess of light, preached by Dionysius the Areopagite, and eagerly accepted by his English interpreter. When I say darkness, I mean a lacking of knowing, and for this reason it is not called a cloud of the air, but a cloud of unknowing that is betwixt thee and thy God. It is a dark mist, he says again, which seemeth to be between thee and the light thou aspirest to. This dimness and lostness of mind is a paradoxical proof of attainment. Reason is in the dark, because love has entered the mice cloud of unknowing. 31 Turoyu's radiance of the divine dark, the inaccessible light wherein the Lord is said to dwell, and to which thought, with all its struggles, cannot attain. Lovers, said Patmore, put out the candles and draw the curtains when they wish to see the god and the goddess, and, in the higher Moneon, the night of thought is the light of perception. These statements cannot be explained, they can only be proved in the experience of the individual soul. Whoso deserves to see and know God rests therein, says Dionysius of that darkness, and, by the very fact that he neither sees nor knows, is truly in that which passes all truth and all knowledge. Then, says the writer of the cloud, whispering as it were to the bewildered neophyte the dearest secret of his love. Then will he sometimes, peradventure, send out a beam of ghostly light, piercing this cloud of unknowing that is betwixt thee and him, and show thee some of his 32 cloud of unknowing privity, the which man may not, nor cannot speak. Numerous copies of the cloud of unknowing and the other works attribute to its writer are in existence. 6 manuscripts of the cloud are in the British Museum, 4 on vellum. Hull. 674, Hull. 959, Hull. 2373, and Royal 17C Xvi, all of the 15th center, Turi, and 2 on paper, Royal 17 of the I6th century, and Royal 17 DV late 15th century. All these agree fairly closely, except for the facts that Hal 2373 is incomplete, several pages having disappeared, and that Hal 959 gives the stance of the whole work in a slightly shortened form. The present edition is based upon Hal 674, which has been transcribed and collated with Royal 17 Xvi, and in the case of specially obscure passages with Royal 17 Xvi, Royal 17 DV, and Hal 2373, obvious errors and signs have been corrected, and several Cloud of Unknowing 33 obscure readings elucidated from these sources. The Cloud of Unknowing was known and read by English Catholics as late as the middle or end of the 17th century. It was much used by the celebrated Benedictine ascetic, the Venerable Augustine Baker, 1575–1641, who wrote a long exposition of the doctrine which it contains. 2 manuscripts of this treatise exist in the Benedictine College of St. Law, Ents at Ampleforth, together with a transcript of the Cloud of Unknowing, dated 1677. Many references to it will also be found in the volume called Holy Wisdom, which contains the stances of Augustine Baker's writings on the inner life. The Cloud has only once been printed, in 187-1, by the Reverend Henry Collins, under the title of The Divine Cloud, with a preface and notes attributed to Augustine Baker and probably taken from the treatise mentioned above. This edition is now out of print. The ms from which it 34 Cloud of Unknowing was made is unknown to us. It differs widely, both in the matter of additions and of omissions, from all the texts in the British Museum, and represents a distinctly inferior recension of the work. A mangled rendering of the Sublime Epistle of Priui Council is prefixed to it. Throughout, the pithy sayings of the original are either misquoted or expanded into conventional and flavorless sentences. Numerous explanatory phrases for which our manuscripts give no authority have been incorporated into the text. All the quaint and humorous turns of speech are omitted or toned down. The responsibility for these crimes against scholarship cannot now be determined, but it seems likely that the text from which Father Collins's edition was, in his own words, mostly taken was a 17th century paraphrase, made rather in the interests of edification than of accuracy, and that it represents the form in which the work was known and used. Cloud of Unknowing 35 by Augustine Baker and his contemporaries. The other works attributed to the author of the Cloud have fared better than this. Dionyse hid Diuanite still remains in Ms, but the Epistee of Prayer J, the Epistle of Discretion, and the Treatise of Discerning of Spirits Caret, together with the paraphrase of the Benjamin Minor of Richard of St. Victor, which is supposed to be by the same hand, were included by Henry Pepwell, in 1521, in a little volume of 7 mystical tracts. These are now accessible to the general reader, having been reprinted in the New Medieval Library, 1910, under the title of The Cell of Self-Knowledge, with an admirable introduction and notes by Mr. Edmund Gardner. Mr. Gardner has collated Pepwell's text with that contained in the British Museum Manuscript Hull, 674. The same volume which has provided the base manuscript for the present edition of the Cloud. This edition is intended not for the 36 Cloud of Unknowing student of Middle English, nor for the specialist in medieval literature, but for the general reader and lover of mysticism. My object has been to produce a readable text, free from learned and critical apparatus. The spelling has therefore been modernized throughout, and except in a few instances, where phrases of a special charm or quaintness, or the alliterative passages so characteristic of the author's style, demanded their written tie-on. Obsolete words have been replaced by their nearest modern equivalents. One such word, however, which occurs constantly, has generally been retained on account of its importance and the difficulty of finding an exact substitute for it in current English. This is the verb *** to list, with its adjective and adverb listy and listily, and the substantive *** list, derived from it. List is best understood by comparison with its opposite, list. Less. It implies a glad and eager activity, or sometimes an energetic cloud of unknowing happy smiley 37 desire or craving, the wish and the will to do something. The noun often stands for pleasure or delight, the adverb for the willing and joyous performance of an action. The putting of one's heart into one's work. The modern lust, from the same root, suggests a violence which was expressly excluded from the Middle English meaning of *** list. My heartiest thanks are due to Mr. David Inwood, who transcribed the manuscript on which this version is based, and throughout has given me skilled and untiring assistance in solving many of the problems which arose in connection with it, and to Mr. J. A. Herbert, Assistant Keeper of Manuscripts in the British Museum, who has read the proofs and also dated the manuscripts of the Cloud for the purposes of the present edition, and to whose expert knowledge and failing kindness I owe a deep debt of gratitude. Evelyn Underhill. Here beginneth a book of contemplation, the which is called The Cloud of Unknowing, in the which a soul is one with God. Here beginneth the prayer on the prologue. God, unto whom all hearts be open, and unto whom all will speaketh, and unto whom no privy thing is hid. I beseech thee so for to cleanse the intent of mine heart with the unspeakable gift of thy grace, that I may perfectly love thee, and worthily praise thee. Amen. Here beginneth the prologue. I in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, I charge thee and I beseech thee, with as much power and virtue as the bond of charity is sufficient to suffer. Whatsoever thou be that this book shalt have in posses, Sion, either by property, either by keeping, by bearing as messenger, or else by borrowing, that in as much as in thee is by will and advisement, neither thou read it, nor write it, nor speak it, nor yet suffer it be read, written, or spoken, of any or to any. But if it be of such one, or to such one, that hath by thy supposing in a true will and by an whole intent purposed him to be a perfect follower of Christ, not only in active living, but in the 46 Cloud of Unknowing, sovereignest point of contemplative living, the which is possible by grace, for to be come to in this present life, of a perfect soul yet abiding in this deadly body, and thereto that doth, that in him is, and by thy supposing, hath done long time before, for to able him to contemplative living by the virtuous means of active living, for else it accordeth nothing to him. And over this I charge thee and I beseech thee by the authority of charity, that if any such shall read it, write it, or speak it, or else hear it be read or spoken, that thou charge him as I do thee, for to take him time to read it, speak it, write it, or hear it, all over. For peradventure there is some matter therein in the beginning or in the middle, the which is hanging, and not fully declared where it standeth, and if it be not there, it is soon after, or else in the end. Wherefore if a man saw one matter and not another, per adventure he might lightly be led into error too, and therefore in eschewing of Cloud of Unknowing 47. This error, both in thyself and in all other, I pray thee for charity do as I say thee. Fleshly J. Anglers, open praisers and blamers of themselves or of any other, tellers of trifles, wronners and tattlers, of tales, and all manner of pinchers, cared I never that they saw this book. For mine intent was never to write such thing unto them. And therefore I would that they meddle not therewith, neither they nor any of these curious, lettered, or unlearned men. Yea, though that they be full good men of active living, yet this matter accordeth nothing to them. But if it be to those men, the which although they stand in activity by outward form of living, nevertheless yet by inward stirring after the privy Spirit of God, whose dooms be hid, they be full graciously disposed, not continually, as it is proper to very contemplatives, but now and then to be perceivers in the highest point of this contemplative act, if such men might see it, they 48 Cloud of Unknowing should by the grace of God be greatly. The last chapter of all teacheth some certain tokens by the which a soul may verily prove whether he be called of God to be a worker in this work or none. Here beginneth a table of the chapters, the first chapter of 4 degrees of Christian men's living, and of the course of his calling, that this book was made unto 65 The second chapter a short stirring to meekness, and to the work of this book. 68 The third chapter how the work of this book shall be wrought, and of the worthiness of it, before all other works. 71 The fourth chapter of the shortness of this work, and how it may not be come to by the curiosity of wit, nor by imagination. 74 The fifth chapter that in the time of this work all the creatures that ever have been, be, now, or ever shall be, and all the works of those same creatures, should be hid under the cloud of forgetting. 85-50 Cloud of Unknowing The sixth chapter a short conceit of the work of this book, treated by question. 88 The seventh chapter how a man shall have him in this work, against all thoughts, and specially against all those that arise of his own curiosity, of cunning, and of natural wit. 90 The eighth chapter a good declaring of certain doubts that may fall in this work, treated by Q's. Tyon, in destroying of a man's own curiosity, of cunning, and of natural wit, and in distinguishing of the degrees and the parts of active living and contemplative. 95 The ninth chapter that in the time of this work the remembrance of the holiest creature that ever God made letteth more than it profiteth. 103 The 10th chapter how a man shall know when his thought is no sin, and if it be sin, when it is deadly and when it is venial. 107 The 11th chapter that a man should weigh each thought, and each stirring after that it is, and always eschew recklessness in venial sin. 3 Cloud of Unknowing. 51 The 12th chapter that by virtue of this work sin is not only destroyed, but also virtues begotten. 113 The 13th chapter what meekness is in itself, and when it is perfect and when it is imperfect. 116 The 14th chapter that without imperfect meekness coming before it is impossible for a sinner to come to the perfect virtue of meekness in this life. 119 The 15th chapter a short proof against their error that say that there is no perfecter cause to be meeked under than is the knowledge of a man's own wretchedness. 123 The 16th chapter that by virtue of this work a sinner truly turned and called to contemplation cometh sooner to perfection than by any other work, and by it soonest may get of God forgiveness of sins. 126 The 17th chapter that a very contemplative list not meddle him with active life, nor of anything that is done or spoken about him, nor yet to answer to his blamers in excuse ing of himself. 131 52 Cloud of Unknowing. The 18th chapter how that yet unto this day all actives complain of contemplatives as Martha did of Mary, of the which complain ing ignorance is the cause. 134 The 19th chapter a short excusation of him that made this book, teaching how all contemplatives should have all actives fully excused of their complaining words and deeds. 137 The 20th chapter how Almighty God will goodly answer for all those that for the excusing of themselves list not leave their business about the love of him. 140 The 120th chapter the true exposition of this gospel word, Mary hath chosen the best part. 144 The 22nd chapter of the wonderful love that Christ had to man in person of all sinners truly, turned and called to the grace of contemplation. Point 148 The 3 and 20th chapter How God will answer and purvey for them in spirit. That for business about his love list not answer nor purvey for themselves. Point 151 Cloud of Unknowing 53 The 4 and 20th chapter What charity is in itself, and how it is truly and perfectly contained in the work of this book. Minus 155. The 5 and 20th chapter That in the time of this work a perfect soul hath no special beholding to any one man in this life. Point 158 The 6 and 20th chapter That without full special grace, or long use in common grace, the work of this book is right travailous, and in this work, which is the work of the soul, helped by grace, and which is the work of only God 162 The 7 and 20th chapter Who should work in the gracious work of the 8 and 20th chapter That a man should not presume to work in this work before the time that he be lawfully cleansed in conscience of all his special deeds of sin. 167-54 Cloud of Unknowing the 9 and 20th chapter That a man should bidingly travail in this work, and suffer the pain thereof, and judge no man. 169 The 30th chapter Who should blame and condemn other men's defaults. 171 The 1 and 30th chapter How a man should have him in beginning of this work against all thoughts and stirrings of sin. 172 The 2 and 30th chapter Of two ghostly devices that be helpful to a ghostly beginner in the work of this book. 174 The 3 and 30th chapter That in this work a soul is cleansed both of his special sins and of the pain of them, and yet how there is no perfect that God giveth this grace freely without any means, and that it may not be come to with means. 180 Cloud of Unknowing 55 The 5 and 30th chapter Of three means in the which a contemplar tive prentice should be occupied, in reading, thinking, and praying. Point 185 The 6 and 30th chapter Of the meditations of them that continually travail in the work of this book. 188 The 7 and 30th chapter Of the special prayers of them that be continual workers in the work of this book. 190 The 8 and 30th chapter How and why that short prayer pierceth the 9 and 30th chapter How a perfect worker shall pray, and what prayer is in itself, and, if a man shall pray in words, which words accord the most to the property of prayer. 196 The 40th chapter That in the time of this work a soul hath no special beholding to any vice in itself nor to any virtue in itself. 199-56 Cloud of Unknowing the 1 and 40th chapter That in all other works beneath this, men should keep discretion, but in this, none. 202 The 2 and 40th chapter That by indiscretion in this, men shall keep discretion in all other things, and surely else never. 205 The 3 and 40th chapter That all writing and feeling of a man's own being must needs be lost if the Perfection of this work shall verily be felt in any soul in this life. 207 The 44th chapter. How a soul shall dispose it on its own part, for to destroy all witting and feeling of its own being. 210 The 45th chapter. A good declaring of some certain deceits that may befall in this work. 214 The 46th chapter. A good teaching how a man shall flee these deceits, and work more with a listless cloud of unknowing. 57 Of spirit than with any boisterousness. The 47th chapter. A slight teaching of this work in purity of spirit, declaring how that on one manner a soul should show his desire unto God, and on ye contrary, unto man. 220 The 48th chapter. How God will be served both with body and with soul, and reward men in both. And how men shall know when all those sounds and sweetness that fall into the body in time of prayer be both good and evil. 224 The 49th chapter. The substance of all perfection is naught else but a good will, and how that all sounds and comforts and sweetness that may befall in this life be to it but as it were accidents. 228 The 50th chapter. 2 which is chaste love, and how in some creatures such sensible comforts be but seldom, and in some right oft. 230 The 51st chapter. That men should have great wariness, so that they understand not bodily. 58 Cloud of Unknowing. A thing that is meant ghostly, and specially it is good to be wary in understanding of this word in, and of this word up. 233 The 52nd chapter. How these young presumptuous disciples misunderstand this word in, and of the deceits that follow thereon. 237 The 53rd chapter. Of divers unseemly practices that follow them that lack the work of this book. 239 The 54th chapter. How that by virtue of this work a man is governed full wisely, and made full seemly as well in body as in soul. 244 The 55th chapter. How they be deceived that follow the fervor of spirit in condemning of some without discretion. 248 The 56th chapter. How they be deceived that lean more to the curiosity of natural wit, and of clergy learned in the school of men, than to the common doctrine and counsel of Holy Church. 252 Cloud of Unknowing. 59 The 57th chapter. How these young presumptuous disciples misunderstand this other word up, and of the deceits that follow thereon. 254 The 58th chapter. That a man shall not take ensample of Saint Martin and of Saint Stephen, for to strain his imagination bodily upwards in the time of his prayer. 257 The 59th chapter. That a man shall not take ensample at the bodily ascension of Christ, for to strain his imagination upwards bodily in the time of prayer, and that time, place, and body, these three should be forgotten in all ghostly working. 263 The 60th chapter. That the high and the next way to heaven is run by desires, and not by paces of feet. 267 The 61st chapter. That all bodily thing is subject unto ghostly thing, and is ruled thereafter by the course of nature, and not contrariwise. 276 O Cloud of Unknowing, the 62th chapter. How a man may wit when his ghostly work is beneath him or without him, and when it is even with him or within him, and when it is above him and under his God. 273 The 63th chapter. Of the powers of a soul in general, and how memory in special is a principal power, comprehending in it all the other powers and all those things in the which they work. 275 The 64th chapter. Of the other two principal powers, reason and will, and of the work of them, before sin and after. 278 The 65th chapter. Of the first secondary power, imagination, by name, and of the works and of the obedience of it unto reason, before sin and after. 280 The 66th chapter. Of the other secondary power, sensuality, by name, and of the works and of the obedience of it unto will, before sin and after. 282 Cloud of Unknowing 6I The 67th chapter. That whoso knoweth not the powers of a soul and the manner of her working, may hly be deceived in understand ing of ghostly words and of ghostly working, and how a soul is made a God in grace. 285 The 68th chapter. That nowhere bodily, is everywhere ghostly, and how our outer man calleth the work of this book naught. 289 The 69th chapter. How that a man's affection is marvelously changed in ghostly feeling of this naught, when it is nowhere wrought. 292 The 70th chapter. That right as by the defailing of our bodily wits we begin more readily to come to knowing of ghostly things, so by the defailing of our ghostly wits we begin most readily to come to the knowledge of God, such as is possible by grace to be had here. 295 The 71st chapter. That some may not come to feel the perfection of this work but in time of ravishing, and some may have it when 62 Cloud of Unknowing they will, in the common state of man's the 72nd chapter. That a worker in this work should not deem nor think of another worker as he feeleth in himself. 303 The 73th chapter.